It's been a while since we've done an update about the British fishing industry, but once again, this is an industry that once we did couple of videos at the start of 2020 and throughout 2020 and then 2021, it sort of started to drop off because, as I always said, we cover this. Things have not improved for the fishing industry. It just went from bad to worse, and it's just not improved. And yet every single story sort of since then has been pretty much roughly the same. Fishermen complaining about the fact that they wanted, quote, Brexit, and it would be an amazing, wonderful Brexit opportunity. Of course, many of them fell in and believed Nigel Farage, unfortunately. But if he's the only person who was talking about, well, quote, talking, again, in massive air quotes, of course, he would turn up to them, he would speak to them. And, if he's the only guy sort of turning up, sort of the only thing you can really maybe slightly hope for, that you maybe get some attention. Of course, they didn't. The fishing industry pretty much overwhelmingly backed Brexit. This wasn't the case of farmers, where it was sort of 50-50. The fishing industry fully behind Brexit. And yeah, we always said it was going to be a bit of a failure, a bit of a problem, especially when your biggest export market is, Europe, especially when you could, again, be a British fishing boat, go and sort of, get your catch, and then you can check your sales data, on your onboard ship and go, oh, actually, if I go land these in the Netherlands or Belgium, I'll get a better price. Can't do that now. Can't do that at all. Meaning that they're now pretty much stuck to a pure, almost UK market. They can export, but it's now extremely difficult for them to do so. The paperwork, the cost of it is really prohibitive. Very early on, I think we covered an oyster seller can't even sell oysters to sort of his usual French customers. He had to pretty much rely on a UK customer base. And basically, that did not provide enough income for him at the time. And I'll always point this out. In the UK, we are very, very much a society that, even though we are on an island, eating fish is not the traditional, shall we say, choice of British people. It has not been that way since before World War One. And of course, the fall in the rate of Christianity had a lot to do with that, because it used to be the cardinal rule at one time where you can't eat meat on a Sunday, so you always had to eat fish. Even since then, consumption of fish in the UK has fallen dramatically. There are no, think about where you live. Very, very few places, unless you are really close to the coast, have specialty seafood restaurants. You're very, very likely to not encounter one unless you are almost directly on the coast, because seafood's just not popular. And that's just the data, the statistics. There's a lot of stuff that backs that up. But it's one of those things that we talked about, and when people on the continent, people in France, Belgium, Netherlands eat far more fish than the entire population of the UK. Brexit was always going to be a problem. But there are also, one of the big complaints is industrialization. Industrialization has massively changed the face of the fishing industry. That's something that a lot of these fishermen can't really get their heads around, that the fishing industry has become a lot more industrialized, become more mechanized. They have not been able to keep up with that. And as a result, they've fallen massively behind their other sort of European counterparts when it comes to this. But there you go. We only said, guys, if you do this, this is going to be a massive problem. But of course, unfortunately, they listen to Nigel Farage. And as one of the things I've always said, Farage is not the fisherman's friend. You shouldn't really, back this guy up, guys. He'll abandon you as soon as he can because you are just a useful tool for him. And Nigel Farage has not even one. Well, actually, no, he did an interview with like a fisherman once on GB News, and of course, it was all doom and gloom. But I wish the fisherman had sort of taken Nigel to task because of the stuff that he promised about what would happen to the fishing industry. So I feel it's only a good time to sort of catch up what's been going on in the British fishing industry. And of course, the big problem at the moment is that Brexit continues to undermine every single aspect of the UK seafood industry. So we're going to have a look at this today. And yeah, do sort of a fish update. Unfortunately, I've lost. I used to have a fish that whenever we did a fish, a fishing update, I would put my fish on and to become King Fish. But unfortunately, I don't know where I've put him. But oh well, never mind. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, yeah. Please do help support the channel by clicking the like and share button. Of course, if you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button. Also down below, there's the YouTube Patreon page. There's the YouTube subscription as well called the Pony Club. There's YouTube thank you button. And of course, there's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can, well, buy me coffee. There we go. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help on the channel. Even if you do, just click the like and share button. It all helps. So, let's go on over to here from the Seafood Source. The title of 4 years on, Brexit continues to undermine segments of the UK seafood industry. So, supporters of the UK's departure from the EU 4 years ago promised a dawn of a golden era for the fishing and seafood industry. Those operating in the sector hoped that the move would offer more control over the volumes caught and people catching in UK waters, subsequently presenting more opportunities for growth, particularly in coastal communities. So here's the thing. They hoped, their fantasy was that fishing quotas that we were in the common fisheries policy would just go, and that UK fishermen would essentially be able to allow to catch what they want. But as we've said, the big thing with fishing industry at the moment, massive change in industrialization. You are seeing a move now to big trawlers. And these trawlers can do basically in a day what it would take basically the fishing fleet of Grimsby as it currently stands at the moment, potentially a month to do. And it only has to go out once a month and it's made its money. And of course, those big industrial ships can flash freeze. They can sometimes even process the fish directly on the ship. They ignore the stuff that's going on land as well. When you land these catches, the processing industry is now probably the biggest part of the UK seafood industry itself. There's no seemingly recognition for that from the fishermen. It was all really hoping to be really drawn back to this past, to this idea of what the UK fishing industry used to be, that we can go back to that. But as we've always said, we've moved on from that years ago, but they are stuck in the past and think that they can somehow bring this back. This was what Farage would constantly tell them. Don't worry, we can all bring this glorious golden age back, but you can't. People have moved on. Time has moved on. Technology has moved on. So it's just impossible to sort of really bring that back. So, continues. So for those attempting to try and navigate the unique challenges that Brexit has wrought on the UK food supply chain, the optimism has faded in many of the country's seafood sector. Many continue to lament the red tape and complicating the export of many types of seafood to overseas key markets. If the products do not make it to Europe, they will often incur significant additional costs. Brexit has also limited the number of foreign workers available to hire by UK processors, leaving them now struggling to find sufficient numbers of employees to operate in a cost-effective manner. So again, big hiring problem in this industry. Recent estimates for Scotland's salmon sector put the cost of the post-additional bureaucratic costs to around £12 million. that the sector now would otherwise wouldn't have had to experience. The trade body, Salmon Scotland, pointing to the painfully slow progress in the introduction of the new measures to smooth the trade flows and open new markets. This comes despite the international demand for the product remaining incredibly high, and the sector being worth over 766 million pounds a year to the UK economy, it said. Bear in mind, that is not a big part of our economy. Like over, almost, 7 million pounds. That alone is like, you're talking less than 1%, like less than 1% in terms of GDP. Again, to you and I, sounds a big number, but the reality is it's not that. It's not a lot. But there's a lot of people who do point, oh, look, it adds so much to our economy. And yes, it does. And you should sort of, focus on that and work on that sector. But you cannot, as Boris Johnson seemed to, well, at the time, talk about doing, basically sacrificing every single other industry in the UK for an industry that is as important to the UK economy as something like Harrods is. You would not jeopardize the entire UK economy to make Harrods like run better or more effectively. You just wouldn't do it. And of course, Boris Johnson eventually did not do that. And they're in the place that they now are because, well, they supported a lot of this. So it continues with them saying, the international demand for Scottish salmon is rightly considered to be the best in the world. It is incredibly high with less bureaucracy. We could further grow exports. This, in turn, would generate millions of pounds for the Scottish and UK economies, Salmon Scotland CEO Tavish Scott said. One method which the sector is trying to boost efficiency is by implementing a digital system for export health certificates, all in an attempt to try and eliminate an extra £3 million of this post-Brexit paperwork. This has now cost the salmon farming companies. Salmon Scotland previously estimated that this has yet to come to fruition, despite the successful pilot test-taking schemes over the past 2 years. And we talked about this, that this was something that they tried. They implemented to see, oh, will a digital system work? They've done it. They've proved it can sort of work, but it hasn't been fully implemented. The UK government doesn't really seem that interested in doing it. And even though the EU did seem sort of receptive to the idea, because the UK government hasn't made any moves on it, it's just gone silent on the whole issue. It sums up a lot of the things, to be honest. Elsewhere, the overriding frustration with the UK shellfish industry primarily now relates to exporting bivalve mussels. I hope I said that right. With the post-Brexit EU now only allowing entry to mussels, oysters, cockles, clams, and scallops harvest originating from what it deems to be the cleanest water classification, or Class A. So if its products have undergone purification or depurification prior to export. So here's the thing. Testing of these drastically changed. Water purity, drastically different. Why? Well, water companies no longer have to worry about EU mandates and proposals. The regulator is not as strong as it used to be because it's got absolutely completely gutted during the Brexit transition period, like many of the regulators that we've talked about in the past. So most UK waters do not qualify in that category, and shellfish now from Class B waters that are not purified cannot be exported to the EU. That obviously adds more cost if you've got to purify them. And these are restrictions that didn't apply to the UK when it was an EU member state, but they now do. That is a third country. The nation also processes a distinct lack of depurification infrastructure. With EU markets essential to British shellfish companies, historically accounting for around 80% of overall exports, with the closed access being absolutely catastrophic. And according to the Shellfish Association of Great Britain, the chief executive, David Jarrod, told the Seafood Source, that the mussel industry in Wales had been obliterated. It went from exporting nearly 14,000 metric tons in 2009 to just 5 metric tons. Sorry, no, 5 metric tons. Let's get that. So 14,000 metric tons to 5. That is a massive drop in that. He said that Brexit is just a gift that keeps on giving, or rather taking away, Jared said. The control that we are not allowed to sell Class B shellfish into Europe that are undepurified has wiped out the industry. And amongst the biggest victims of the post-Brexit consequences on the shellfish industry are. So, yeah. Like I say, nothing's changed. Honestly, nothing's changed. You can go back and watch like a couple of videos a couple of years ago about how bad it was for the British fishing industry. Nothing has changed. Where's Farage? Doesn't care. I made video after video saying this, that, you know, and I've been proven right as time has gone on. Farage never cared about any of these fishing communities, fishermen, or anything like that. He was not the fisherman's friend that he claimed to be. He has never once set foot anywhere near any of these fishermen. And if the fishermen do want to sort of point their ire at someone, they must rightly, and I think, point their ire at someone like Nigel Farage. Now, he'll say, oh, but I wasn't in government. I wasn't in charge. The reality is, he told a lot of these fishermen complete lunacy, fantasies, lies, and fed into this idea that, oh, we can bring back this golden age of UK fishing. And yeah, it's impossible to bring back, but that's the delusion he fed into. And unfortunately, a lot of these people fell into that delusion. More so than any other industry. Because the fishing industry pretty much 100% backed Brexit. Now, it might be maybe like 99.9%. Maybe. Let's be fair. I suspect that there are, or that there were fishermen who are like, no, Brexit's not going to be good for us. But ultimately, and the vast majority of fishermen were very, very much for Brexit. This is why, and I will say this, one of the biggest coups we could ever get for rejoining was if we could sway fishermen to support rejoining. Because I'll tell you now, that would be a massive coup for a rejoin movement. Massively so for that. Just once again, there are lots of benefits to the British fishing industry being, once again, part of the EU. So, but as always, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when it comes down to this. But as always, until then, we'll see you all next time. Please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.